Hi, I'm Dr. Shiloh.
And I'm Dr. Scott.
And this is LA Not So Confidential, the forensic psychology and true crime podcast.
Each episode, we explore the intersection of psychology, the criminal justice system, and entertainment.
Welcome Behind the Couch. Today's live stream conversation features Jason Usry, creator of the new podcast, Inconceivable, the story of Temujin Kensu. We discuss the murder of Scott Macklem and the seemingly wrongful conviction of Temujin Kensu.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Behind the Couch.
I feel like they changed that music.
What's that?
I feel like they changed that music of that countdown thingy.
It kind of threw me off. This was a little more jazzy, new agey.
Yeah.
As I was expecting that StreamYard thing that was yeah. You guys, welcome back. This is awesome. We'll get into it in a second, but today is a really special Behind the Couch.
After school special style?
It is. It's a very special episode, right? But welcome back, everybody. We are we're situated into 2025. There's no going back, only forward, going through, right? Pushing through.
The hits keep coming. I was more sick last week than I've ever been in my 40s.
You know what? And here's the thing is Dr. Shiloh, for anybody out there listening, we laugh about me and her husband getting the man flu, where we're just literally disabled for 10 days. And this is the first time I've ever heard you be out of work this long due to illness. So
yeah,
that shit's real. That's going around.
I've worked there almost 8 years. I've only called in sick twice. And those are one for each time that I had COVID. And I called in sick twice last week. So I just doubled it.
Well, like you were saying that your doctor told you that this is likely the strain of the flu, that they were not able to get this included in the yearly flu vaccine. So you got the strain that wasn't covered, right?
So stand by, everybody, even if you got the flu shot.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going. We won't go too far afield there because we have a absolutely fascinating guest and topic to discuss today. But there is everybody, just with all the weirdo changes in the government right now, you need to take care of yourself. Start taking your zinc. Hopefully you're not living in one of these red cities where they won't allow you to wear masks. Unfortunately,
won't allow you.
Yeah, no. There's legislation passed in several southern states where you're not allowed to wear masks in public. And they're doing it as a public safety because you might be a bad person about to commit a crime, but you're wearing an N95 mask to conceal yourself. So
yes. All right. Yes.
There you go.
Learning.
So just as a heads up, we have a meetup in LA Friday, April 11th, 2025. Again, in person, real life meetup in LA Friday, April 11th, 2025. Stay tuned for more details, and we hope you can make it because we always have a blast when we do these.
Yeah. April will be here before we know it. Details, location to come, even though we think we know what that is. It will be in downtown. And if anyone's coming in from out of town, you want to know a decent place to stay or something. Right. If you're going to be in downtown, hit us up, let us know, and we'll definitely steer you in the right direction. Okay. So before we get to our guest, we are going to welcome our newest Patreon members. So at the associate level, we have My Name Is Not Rick. We have Emil or Emily, and we have Mar. We also have Adrian, Karen, and Jason B is back. So thank you guys so much at the associate level. And then we have 2 new doctorate level Patreon members who are Courtney L, and then Trisha C. So we are so grateful for you guys, especially, it's been quite a few people here in the last 6 weeks or so. So thank you. And don't forget, if you join at the doctoral level, every month you're entered into a merch giveaway. And since it's January, everyone is back in the running. So our January winner is Lauren H. Yay. Our friend Lauren, who is a doctoral level Patreon member, very active on our Discord. She's awesome. We love her. So congrats, Lauren. We'll just get in contact with you, see if you've won before and what we can send you, or if you're ready for some new merch. So thank you guys.
You guys, right? Just to tag a little bit, one more thing on, although I've been accused of yapping and behind the couch, but that's okay. Again, you guys, I say this all the time, and I'm not going to stop saying it because I still am just blown away 7.5 years after doing this project. that we have so many wonderful Patreon members that continue to join. And also, like Shiloh was just saying before we started today, that like we just got all these Patreons like recently. So people continue to discover us. Like we kind of go, well, where were you? And they're like, but who cares? But they're all there marathoning our episodes. It's wonderful. We're getting comments on episodes literally from 7 years ago, which is
Yeah,
kind of amazing.
it is. And hello to Teresa. Hello, Catherine. Akiko wants to know if the meetup's going to be at the Hotel Cecil. Maybe I could help pull that off. I don't know. I know
Bring
some
a
people,
lot of disinfectant wipes if it
but you
is.
will be
Just a
wearing a
lot.
mask.
Just cover yourself in a hazmat suit.
No, we will not be there. I
Yeah.
promise. All right. I'm going to bring on our guest as you read his
Yes, let's
bio.
make sure his face is showing so he can be appropriately embarrassed as we sing his
Absolutely.
praises, right? So, welcome, Jason. Jason Usry is a multi-time Emmy-nominated broadcast media veteran. Can't believe he's a veteran with that gorgeous skin of his. He's had 3 movies produced, with one now currently in post-production and others are currently in development. He is a quadruple threat in all of the areas and in an area of the country that needs to start developing its movie production capabilities. So go Savannah, go. He is the editor of some of your favorite podcasts, including LA Not So Confidential. He's the founder of Ear Cult LLC, a company that he's been working to build into a multimedia storytelling empire. He's well on his way. We're huge fans. He's an editor, consultant, creator, storyteller, journalist, most importantly, a friend, but also somebody with the level of experience that I believe took LA Not So Confidential to a completely different level of production. And
Yeah.
this is a guy who is so invested in what he does. I don't know how he is as multitasker as he is, but he knows our voices so well that when we're recording something at 9 p.m. at night and we are dead and we're just generating gobbledygook, he makes it sound like we're smarter than we are. So, Jason, welcome and thank you so much.
You guys are amazing. I mean, I can't even say how great that introduction is. Like, I'm very, very grateful that you think that of me.
Well, you're
I'm just
also
trying to do good work.
basically our brother here.
Yeah,
So
I
really.
know. This is family now. So, but
totally.
I'm very grateful that you both have allowed me to join you in your projects, and grateful to tell stories that are important to people, and that's sort of my focus. So I appreciate you both and I love you both, and so thank you so much for
Of
having me on
course.
here tonight.
Yeah, this is fun. And we need to all stay focused, make sure we don't just turn this into a like, hey, catch up, love fest that it could be.
Right.
And that it should be that we should be scheduling actually, because it's been a while since we've all been together.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's kind of start at the beginning. We'll back way up. And if you can just quickly, with all of those things that you do, how the heck did you even get into editing podcasts in the first place? And then it really seems like you, I mean, by the time at least, we got to know you. And then after, you were like the go-to guy in true crime. How did all of that even end up happening?
Well, a lot of that started with you guys, so my first project in podcasting was a show called End of Watch with Bootsy and Sal, which was focused on 2 former law enforcement professionals who recognized that mental health was an issue. I started working with Rebecca Sebastian when she had Dialogue, and she has a lot of projects now, but I'd worked with her and she recommended you guys to talk to us on that show. And then, of course, you guys gratefully and graciously came on to that show and provided some mental health insight from a law enforcement perspective. And then we obviously connected from that, and
Yeah.
a wonderful partnership emerged from that. But it was initially my first, and continues to be I think both of you would enjoy this. My dream podcast is to do a show called Food and Spirits, which is going around to quote haunted restaurants, bed and breakfasts, bars and things like that, having their food and talking about their haunted history.
Is
And
there much of that in Savannah at all?
I mean, just a little bit, just a little bit all around this area. And, before podcasting was around, I had sort of outlined a book that I wanted to write to do that.
Mhm.
I didn't have the resources to do it, but it was sort of a dream of mine and still is. But that was sort of the thing. And when Kevin Grogan, who is Bootsy on End of Watch with Bootsy and Sal, he came to me, we talked about his book and his project. We were talking about writing a screenplay for it. He was working on the screenplay. He asked me to come on and help him because I'd worked on other screenplays. And he also told me, he said, hey, I've got this guy named Lou Velozzi. We want to do a podcast about mental health. And so you guys were a natural fit to come and join that show. And so grateful that you did, because it blossomed into more than just you guys being guests on our show, but the two of you becoming to the people that I trust the most in the world. And I'm so grateful that that happened.
And were Bootsy and Sal just people you kind of knew? Well, obviously you knew Kevin more, but just kind of from circles in Savannah? Or, I mean, how did you get kind of hooked into really like, a bit of a law enforcement world in that sense?
It's funny because I reached out to Kevin. So I work in local television here in Savannah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a storyteller. So I like talking to people about the way they told stories. I'm super interested in that. And I reached out to him. I'd missed a press event that he was doing for his book at the time. And so I reached out to him and I said, hey, I'd love to talk to you about, your storytelling and those sorts of things. Well, what ended up happening was that I'd worked on this project called Deadwater with a director named Chris Helton. And Deadwater, one of the managers that worked with a number of the actors on that film, low budget film, but worked with a number of the actors on that film, happened to be connected to Kevin through another person who he managed. And so I walk into this little pizzeria, at 1:30 on a Friday afternoon, and he basically told me, I've investigated you already. And
Of course
they say they say you're okay. And that was it was a great thing. And, Kevin and I are super tight. He's probably mad. He wanted me to go to a hockey game tonight, but I couldn't do that because I'm here. He and I are very, very tight. He's one of my best friends in the world, but that sort of started that relationship there. And then he invited me to meet Lou, and Lou so Kevin, just for background, Kevin was a patrol officer in Savannah. He was a former MP. He was at the Baghdad bombing. I don't remember all the details of that. He was an MP there. But he was a patrol officer in Savannah, then became a homicide detective, and then he started working on special operations. And met Lou Velozzi. And Lou, he's a retired undercover ATF agent who operated primarily, or the thing he's known for is storefront operations, which is when the ATF set up sort of fake storefronts to entice, these were places that would entice high crime individuals to come in to do things that they might not do in the public, right? So, right. And in those cases, he took a number of crime guns off the street, narcotics, that sorts of things. And both of their careers ended sort of unceremoniously. They are very open about those things, which is why they are so open to talk about the mental health stigma that occurs in law enforcement in general. And I really respected that. And so fortunately, I was able to talk with them, which opened up a whole new world of learning about law enforcement in a way that I wouldn't never have had the opportunity to. And in during that time, I had reached out to Rebecca, and we had started working together some, and then she introduced me to you guys, and then to Tim and Lance from Crawl Space and Missing. And it just sort of worked out that there's just an enormous amount of support and wonderful people in this network, with relationships that we built with each other. And it just worked out that I got some very fortunate opportunities from that. So that's how it kind of started. And then at some point I figured out I wanted to do stuff on my own. And it's just, I guess that's just the natural progression.
Sounds like you really hooked in with, not only are you gifted as a foundation, but you hooked in with some really interesting people at the very beginning. We can't say enough good things about Rebecca or Bootsy and Sal and their whole production. Those guys really did a great job. But, you had been already generating your own screenplays and working. You also work in media as well in the Savannah area, and you have been for years. But when did you know that this was a path that you wanted to follow, aside from your day job, which was still in the industry-ish, right? And then give us the origin story of your first, I believe your first big solo project, which was Santa Maybe a Criminal.
Yeah, I've always wanted to tell stories. And the cool thing is that I'd thought about that project for a while, just sort of as a joke. But you guys know that the two of you and Rebecca and Michelle Kaz were on a text message with me the night that seed was formed.
So
And it
we
was
are the origin story, is what you're saying.
you guys are the origin story. Like that's why you're mentioned in every episode that I release, and every other one I'll release as soon as I can get back to that part. But no, like the four of you really did inspire me to do it, because we talked about on a text thread one night. We were making jokes about things, and I said, this makes me want to start my Santa is a Criminal podcast. I call it Santa is a Criminal podcast. And, over time it became Santa Maybe a Criminal. And, we talked through the things, and, Michelle wrote charging documents up, and, I talked to you guys about the psychology of things. And, I love that project so much. And it was really interesting, because that project was something that evolved, because initially it was supposed to be Santa Claus as a suspect on Dateline in the South. And then after the second season, when, initially when we talked, because I was very reticent about doing it, I said, I have to find actors to do this. And you guys were like, we'll do it, which was great, because it was during the pandemic, and you're like, we'll be voice. And so It started out very small.
Please give us something to do.
Yeah. Right.
Distract us.
You're right. And we started out very, very small, and like I was not writing a whole lot of characters and things like that. And then people started like enjoying it, which was really nice. And then in the middle of the seasons, season 1 and season 2, people started asking me to be on the show, which was really cool, and suggesting storylines, just like, oh, they're invested in this. This is kind of neat. And so season 2 turned into a little more heartfelt, and things that are more in tune with who I am. I enjoy doing the true crime stuff, but that stuff is heavy. And I want to do something that had a little bit more hope and comedy, and not necessarily comedy. Like, it was comedic in the first season, but wanted to have something that had a little more heart in it than just like, the specific true crime tropey stuff that I kind of wandered into. And so, I had the opportunity to work with a lot of true crime podcasters that really, every single one of them, both of you included, were so gracious and giving of your time with it, when I wasn't asking for anything, just for you to kind of play a character. And it was it will probably be the greatest thing I ever do. I love it. I love the show so much, and I love it so much more because I got to do it with my friends. And I don't know how many more of those projects I get to do, kind of without that. But
I look at it as, we had a blast doing it, and it has such great legs. And I think of it as the, one of the first rungs on your ladder as you continue to climb up and do these things, because you're building such a great network. It is a little bit ironic that you were planning to use Santa Maybe to get away from the darkness of this genre, but that's kind of turned around recently with something else that is becoming sort of another stationary leg of your content creation career. Missing in a Moment. Tell us what's going on with that project and how it came to be.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up, because I was doing Santa Maybe, and a number of people came to me and said, oh, like, you should do another project and do some like real true crime, because with Santa Maybe it was such a niche show. And in niche shows like that, you don't get a ton of, I had to help the good audience for that, but people were saying, like, you need to get your voice out, sort of bigger, right? And I said, I don't know that I want to do that. I'm sort of uncomfortable with that. Like, I do the editing for a lot of shows, and I hear all those things, but I don't know if I'm capable of that. I said, but I will, I kind of like agreed that I will do some things and just sort of test the water. So I did a few sort of test episodes on the Santa Maybe feed. And then I got really interested in missing persons cases. And the first case I got interested in, and it's unfortunately right now, it's the only case that's released on the Missing in a Moment feed, but it's the case of Morgan Nick. And I do have a number of cases researched now. It's just a matter of me finishing. I've got another one mostly edited. So that project will continue. It's just a matter of finding the time. I'm a one person studio at this point. I'm trying to get that to be not a one person studio, but
yeah, I actually will. I feel pretty solid in the prediction that you're going to be expanding to, partners and employees pretty soon. And I think one of the reasons is because of the work, this unbelievable work that you're doing on this current case. And because I want to be aware of the time, and because I want to spend as much time as we can on this absolutely fascinating case that you've been putting into content. And how did you come to know about Temujin's case, and help your audience understand how you decided to tell this story, what pulled you in, and if you can, to give us an overview. I mean, I can send people to the Wikipedia page, but that only barely scratches the surface of this really miscarriage of justice.
So I first learned about Temujin's case on podcasts. I started listening to podcasts. I heard it on a few, and it was a case that I could not believe. The overview is that Scott Macklem, I always try to mention his name. That's the thing that sort of gets missed in a lot of these wrongful conviction cases. Nobody remembers the victim's name. Scott Macklem, he was 20 years old. He was murdered in the St. Clair County Community College parking lot, SC4, on November 5th, 1986. The man that was arrested and then subsequently convicted for the crime was named Fred Freeman. Fred later changed his name to Temujin Kensu. The link between Scott and Fred was that they dated the same girl about 5 to 6 months apart. Scott's girlfriend dated Temujin for a few weeks in the spring of 1986. He left and moved from Port Huron, Michigan, which is where St. Clair County Community College is, to the Upper Peninsula. And I drove that route. I've been to Michigan twice to investigate this case. It's about 450 miles between the two spots. Temujin, or Fred at the time, was alibied up north, as it's talked about there, before, during, and after the crime, in a time span that is inconceivable, which is the name of my podcast plug, to have committed the crime. There are a number of speculations around this case. I've gone so deep into this. People say you go into a rabbit hole in these cases. I don't think it's a rabbit hole as much as I think it's a whirlpool, because when you
a vortex.
It is, you go into it and you're sort of whipped around. You're searching one thing and then something else happens and you're whipped around to the other side. And it's very striking to look at facts that should have been really, really run down. We have a number of things that we're trying to run down right now, and have those things sort of shoved back in your face. And, either by the state, the prosecutor's office, there are just a number of things I did not expect to get. Like, this was not my jam. I walked into this like I'm the Santa guy. I walk into this just so naive and we'll just make this all happy and all that stuff, and it's not all happy, right? And so I found out about it from podcasts, and about just under a year ago, I'd followed the case for about 3 years. And Temujin's wife, she was an advocate and then became his wife. They ended up getting married. He had a wife who was his advocate for a number of years, who passed away from cancer while he was incarcerated. And Paula Kensu, she reached out to me. I did not know her. She reached out to me about Santa May Be a Criminal.
Oh.
and said she loved the show, and she asked if I would, because he couldn't listen to the podcast in prison, asked if I would send a script. And so I forwarded her a script, a PDF that she could print to take to him in the prison. And then a few months after, or actually it might have been a year after that, actually. But you sometimes you find a story that just sort of like it doesn't sounds so trite, and I hate it. I hate to say it this way, but like, you don't choose a story, the story chooses you, sort of thing. And that's sort of the way I feel about this case, because I say this all the time to people. I'm not a wrongful conviction warrior. I think most of the people that are in prison earn their way there. I'm not saying they can't be rehabilitated or anything like that, but the administration of justice in this country is far better than it is in most. And I trust the system here a lot more than I would other places. And the thing that's striking to me is that this sort of case can go in this way, and there being no explanation to it. I mean, everything about this case to me is absolutely mind-boggling.
I wanted to jump in and sort of validate what you're saying. I've spoken to you briefly. Shiloh has heard me talk about a case for years that I have very strong feelings about as well. Like, I just doesn't add up for me. And it happens to be someone that I previously worked with. Like, and yet there's also, because I work in this field and because I have an intersection with the legal system, I'm like, but what if? But what if? And yet when there's this overwhelming level of evidence, and I think something that it is remarkable about your particular project, and this is why I really want everyone to listen to it, is that, you know, you just laid the basis for, compared to the majority of the world, the American legal system is pretty solid. And yet there are huge holes. And most of those holes happen because of individual personalities or structures, whether it's, I'm not going to say crooked, but it's about, you know, attorneys are there to do their job. Their job is a very narrow focus, which we don't conceive of it as very focused in some ways. But those of us that are on the outside, and I think that's one of the things that's kind of great about responsible content creation, is someone like you that is really stepping back and looking at a huge, broad perspective, all the factors that maybe are not what some law enforcement agencies want to do. Some people want to, like, they want to wrap it up and be done with it and move on, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I would say that, I mean, just like anything that's managed by people, there are going to be those holes, right? From my standpoint, like, I recognize what you said, that every individual working on this case, you know, and I don't throw shade at anybody. That's a big part of my podcast. I could easily try to, like, demonize any number of people on both sides. I'm going to tell the truth, you know, and I've made it very clear to every person that's relevant in the case. I've made it clear that I'm going to tell the truth is what I see. And I'm going to be very honest, and I'm willing to be wrong about those things, but it's going to be from my perspective, and I'm going to be giving my story and working on this case. But the other part of that is, it may be a situation where we have dealing with these things and things don't go right, but we do have to continue to look at the truth, and we do have to continue to follow these lanes down and look at everything. And I think I've told you guys this in our text messages, is that I'm walking into this like a toddler. Like, I'm just like asking every question because I don't have those blinders on. I don't have the restrictions that, you know, and I respect the restrictions are there for necessary reasons, and I get that. Like, but I don't have those because I am not a litigator. I am not an attorney. I'm not a law enforcement professional. Like, I just get to go ask whatever I want to ask, right? And a lot of times in doing that, I've gotten absolute brick walls in my face, and I've had to try to, like, hammer at them and those sorts of things. Sometimes I've gotten a hole in it, and sometimes I haven't. But that's sort of like, I think that's the important thing about what I'm trying to do, and what so many content creators who have this very, very righteous feeling about a specific case are trying to do, is they're just asking questions because why not? Like, why haven't we seen this answer? Because the questions I ask, I know the case, the questions I'm asking are questions that have not been answered through the official documentation so far as I've seen. And that's sort of our only avenue right now, is to try to follow that path. And I think that's so important, that there's no problem in asking questions. And not to get on a soapbox, I don't want to get a Scott take here, but
You can share a soapbox with someone. It's fine.
Please join me, knock me off.
But the thing I think about the education system that I have a problem with is that we train children to answer questions. We do not teach them how to ask the questions. And so that's a thing for me. And that's something that I've really learned here, because that's not my discipline, but I'm learning that now. And it's really, really, it's amazing to see the things that you can kind of find, and the avenues you can open up if you actually follow that path.
So this essentially, your formula is that this will be unfolding in realish time. Is that the aim to this?
Well, I mean, it took me about 30 drafts to write the first episode. And I'm looking at approaching this in a way that's very different than any other podcast that's done it. I look at this, it's sort of dark poetry in a way. It's sort of Shakespearean in a way. And so there will be, literary things I pepper throughout the series to reinforce what I'm going through, because part of it is my point of view from doing the story. Obviously, we will go through the trial. We will go through the evidence. I sent to you both the photo lineup, which is pretty prejudicial, and how my 7-year-old picked Temujin out of that lineup in 4 seconds.
Right.
And that was just a very unscientific test, but it was a test. And just to see that was very, very interesting to me. And I appreciate you both agreeing to come on the show and talk about some of the psychological things, because that's the other thing I'm doing. I'm talking to you guys, I'm talking to legal experts, I'm talking to pilots, I'm talking to other private investigators, I'm talking to advocates, I'm talking to a bunch of different people that surround this case. I'm trying to talk to the family of Scott Macklem. I want to know who he is. Mm-hmm. The striking and discouraging thing about this case for me is, like I said at the beginning, Scott gets forgotten in this a lot. And the first time I went to Michigan, I ended up going to Croswell, and I visited his grave, and I knelt at his grave, and I said a prayer for him, and spent some time, because I thought that was really important. It was for me. I don't know if it is for anything else, but it was important for me to take on the project and grant him the respect that if I'm saying that I have questions about this conviction, I need to at least spend some time with him. And so I had a chance to do that. And my focus is the truth. And I have my own current theories about what happened on that day. It is going to be very, very hard. It's been almost 40 years to prove any of those things.
Yeah.
There are things that are less hard to prove, and those things will be examined, very thoroughly. And I would also say too that, and I've said this, I have an FBI consultant who I work with on this case, and I have called her repeatedly. And, she talks me off the ledge sometimes, because, and I have told this to Temujin as well, I am trying to convict you. I want, because from my standpoint, people would think I walked into this really biased to his innocence. And while people will say, well, then you're going to tell a very slanted podcast to his innocence, I now say, I came on a blank slate, and that gave me that opinion. Now I'm the guy that's trying to beat up that opinion. And so I'm really, really trying to approach this as a real honest search for what happened that day. And that means, and I've told Temujin this also, that means some things are going to look ugly for you. You got to be okay with that. And he told me, I trust you, do everything, like say everything.
Yeah, at this
And
point, I mean, we're talking 1985. That's
yeah,
insane.
it's unbelievable. It's
Yeah,
inconceivable.
And
it's
that
I gotta get
inconceivable
better
for
at
sure.
that.
and that
Yeah.
brings up one of the questions in the audience right now from Tool
Mhm.
Girl. She's saying, with a case that old, are there issues with the availability of witnesses and the reliability of their memory, at least from your perspective and what you're doing now? Is that an issue?
Yeah, so we have private investigators up north, and so the area that this case, the murder happened in Port Huron. Temujin's alibied in Rock and Escanaba, which is again about between 420 and 450 miles away, because they're about 28 miles away from each other, right? So Temujin alibied at 1:30 a.m. on November 5th. 2:30 a.m. He's alibied at 9 a.m. and he's alibied at 11:30 in that area, right? 9 a.m. is in Rock. Everything else is in Escanaba. So yes, their RPIs have looked into some of these alibi witnesses who were up there at the time. And yeah, of course, many of them are much older. They don't remember. We do have a bunch of alibi witnesses. So Temujin was, he was 23 at the time of the murder, and he hung out with a lot of younger people. So many of those younger people stand by their alibis to this day, those that we have access to and who are alive. And all of them do. Like none of them have
Mhm.
changed their stories at all. But yeah, many of the people that we had that we hoped that we could bring on are deceased. And though that is a really big challenge, other things that are big challenges are the availability of evidence. So there's very little evidence at the crime scene. So Scott was shot with a shotgun. He was shot in his lower left side. The shell went through his body. It was close enough that there was wadding in his left lower side.
Mm.
But it was far enough that the pellets did not exit his body. They ended up under his right
Mm.
armpit. Those were removed in the autopsy. So one of the prevailing theories at the time was this could have been done through a car. Well, I don't know that that's possible, because I think you would have to shoot through the door frame in that situation. So what I believe happened is that Scott knew his killer. Scott also parked in a separate parking lot that he normally parked in, that he was ticketed in before, which was, so there were two different parking lots at the time that students parked in one, faculty typically parked in another. He parked in a separate parking lot that he normally parked in on that day. So my belief, not to get to the end of my story, because it could change. You might
Sure.
find out in 20 episodes, like I completely believe it was aliens or something crazy. But my belief is that he knew his killer and he expected the meeting to take place, and that this was a hit, because if the round was fired from low, I think it was hidden. It was raised up to remain concealed, was fired, and Scott died there on that cold Michigan parking lot. And the other things at the scene, his books were placed on his car hood, his gym bag was placed, and his shoes were placed on his bag there next to his car, and his key was in the door. So I do believe that there was some sort of meeting that was set to take place that morning, and he knew his killer. And the other thing, too, quickly I'll say, is there was an ammunition box that was found nearby. It was found by a student whom I've chatted with as well. It was not found by police. It was found I think it was the next day, had a fingerprint on it that was tested against Temujin, and it was negative to Temujin. I've been repeatedly asking for that to be retested. It was tested in APHIS in 2008. I'm repeatedly asking to get any sort of report so we can get on that as well. That's the only evidence that we have that seems to align with the crime from that day. The other things are eyewitness, and no one saw the crime take place, by the way. People saw cars move away from the scene. The photo lineup I referenced, there was a car that was moving away from the area that the crime took place, with a white male with facial hair who was wearing a ski mask that was pulled to his forehead. And I don't know if you've been to Michigan, but that's what a lot of people look like. And the other thing that really, in terms of the other two things that really impacted the jury when they were polled, was there was a jailhouse informant named Philip Joplin. Philip Joplin and a man named Booker Brown were placed in a holding cell with Temujin for a brief period of time before being transported to different facilities. Philip Joplin said that Temujin/Fred said that he killed Scott and it would never be proven. Booker Brown also testified that he never said that. He only proclaimed his innocence. The jury believed Philip Joplin. Philip Joplin later recanted years later and said that he was provided inducements. He was promised a placement in a residential housing program. So that's why Philip Joplin says he did that. He's deceased.
I just want to jump in here, right? Because this, to me, talk about inconceivable. The idea, first of all, as Tool Girl in the comments is talking about, jailhouse informants, rarely reliable, right?
Mm-hmm.
But here we have even more of a rarefied, this is it's not somebody that he was a cellie with for 3 years.
Correct.
This is like a short,
2 hours,
abbreviated chunk of time in a holding cell with a complete stranger.
Yep.
And somebody is going to turn, just the reality. I mean, it's just so inconceivable that someone would go, I got an airtight alibi. Yeah, I killed him. I got an airtight alibi. This is all going to go my way. That just doesn't happen. It just does not happen. As well as, like, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around how he chartered, on his relatively,
let's
small
go into
income
that.
at the time. He chartered an aircraft to fly from where he had a visual alibi to kill the person and fly back. I mean, it's that.
Yeah. Can I go into that real fast? So
I would love you to, because it blows my mind and it makes your title even more apt.
It is absolutely inconceivable. So and again, I drove this route. It took me, in a 2024 Kia, 2024 roads, in perfect conditions. It was October. It wasn't, November 5th when it was cold and all that stuff. About 9 hours to get. Now I stopped. I stopped and went to the bathroom and stuff. Which you would think that's a long time. You might need to stop to go to the bathroom if you're in daylight. Also, by the way, so when the prosecution could not make it make sense based on their unimpeachable alibi witnesses that the crime could have taken place by taking a car from Rock or Escanaba to Port Huron to kill Scott, what Robert Cleland, who, by the way, the day before Scott was killed, lost the attorney general race in the state of Michigan. And I will say this, although I may edit it out in the episode, Scott was allegedly seen at his campaign party the night before at St. Clair Inn. I went there and stayed there in January. And I asked about this with staff. Of course, nobody knows now, but I was able to verify that Robert Cleland did have his campaign party at the St. Clair Inn on November 4th, 1986. So anyhow, Scott's father, Gary Macklem, was a mayor, the mayor and former police chief of Croswell, which is where Scott is buried, and allegedly and reportedly, repeatedly, was a supporter of Robert Cleland. Okay, so that would make some kind of sense if Scott might have been there. I don't know that. I'm not clear on substantiating that yet. But so Robert Cleland, when he could not prove that Temujin took a car from the UP to kill Scott, said, well, he could have chartered a plane. Well, again, as Scott alluded, he was on welfare. He was ruled indigent. That's why he was given his counsel in the trial.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So what they said was that it could have been possible that he chartered a plane from Escanaba, flown down to Port Huron, and landed in a field. So if you believe that, that means you would have to believe that there was a car there waiting for him. And then you would also have to believe that maybe the person who gave him the car knew where Scott was going to be at the time he's going to be there, and that Scott was going to be in a different place than he typically was.
Right.
So you have at the very least, you would have the pilot would have to be a conspirator on this, more than likely, unless Temujin held a gun to his head and said, take me down there.
And you
But
also
then
have to have flight plans no matter what. You can't
and
just
there are no
Yeah.
records of any flight plans or anything like that. And the flight, the distance of flight between Escalade and Port Huron is about 200 miles. And so I did the math on this. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it makes the first part of the flight is what everybody talks about, but the back half of the flight is the thing I'm very interested in, because there is very little chance that even if all of that was true, that he could have killed Scott at 8:55 a.m., which is when the people describe as a firecracker or car backfiring goes off, gotten into a car, driven, and I've been there. There's not a lot of space to I mean, you've got to go 20 minutes or, more out. Like I'm being generous by saying 20 minutes to find a field that you could land in, right?
Sure.
So that's 20 minutes. Then you got to get there and you got to get the plane going, right? So that's another few minutes, right? And then you got to go like take off in the middle of a field. You leave your car there, right? Without a conspirator, apparently. Just leave the car there and fly back. And then that gives you very, very little time, because when you land in Escanaba, then you got to get in your car, then you got to drive to the karate studio, which is where he's alibied by a number of other witnesses. It's just literally you have to have everything work better and faster than anything you can imagine. And also, there's no evidence he ever met Scott. So it is very, I'll hold back my theory on it, but there is a very, very crazy thought that he would have done this. The other thing too is that the prosecution theory for the motive, the theory was that he was jealous. Temujin was jealous of Scott. I can tell you this, based on my investigation of this case, Temujin was not hurting for women. He basically could have turned around, pointed his finger out, hit one, and they would go with him. They would be with him, right? And so for that to be a thing, that you would think that he moved up to this space 450 miles away and he's jealous of someone else, which, by the way, when he was arrested, he was with a different woman other than his pregnant fiance, by the way, right? That he was so hurting over this thing. To me, it's just preposterous. There are so many different things that in this case, once you go into the whirlpool, there's so many things when you look at it. So much of it doesn't make sense, but almost all of it makes you think this is inconceivable, that there's no way he could have done this.
Well, and I think that's what stands out differently than other wrongful conviction cases is you listen to any previous coverage on it and you're like, usually there's a little bit of weight on both sides. And what do I need to wade through? And this one, you're like, no. So it has to be about something else, right? It has to be about something else. And that's the big missing piece of why did they have to fight so hard to convict this person?
I will tell you my thoughts on that. So I think, like I said, that Scott's father was important in the community. I think that there were things that were unsavory that he did not want exposed. I think that they wanted it done quickly. And I think that they forced it. So the girlfriend had another person she dated. So she was with Scott. She was with another man. And she was with Temujin. And then she was back with Scott. The man in the middle there, the other man, was on a boat at the time of the murder. So he was completely ruled out. I think they were looking at trying to get whoever the next greatest opportunity was, right? Because it's very easy. I mean, most murders obviously are domestic in nature, or, an intimate partner or former intimate partner, right? I have no problem with saying that's completely the thing that you should go down first, the route you should go down first.
Yep.
But with Temujin, there was he was not a good dude. They wanted to paint him as, the media painted him as the ninja killer. Well, the murder took place with a shotgun, a 12-gauge shotgun, one shot at 8:55 in broad daylight, in public, right?
He wasn't beat to death with nunchucks.
Right. It was, or in the middle of the night, or anywhere.
Right.
It's the worst ninja.
Not
Yeah, it's completely non-ninja, right? But it was a good narrative
sure.
for the public. And that's one of the things that's very interesting in this case. And, me working in media, like I'm very interested in that
Yeah.
angle too.
Yeah,
It's,
the spin, the story.
yeah, the spin in the story is very, very important. So, I mean, you have those things, there are so many things when you start to like really, really go into it and read the transcripts and the supplemental reports. Temujin passed a number of polygraphs. What I've been told by law enforcement professionals is that, if you pass a polygraph, we really kind of just like say, all right, well, you become lower on the level of what we consider worth
Sure.
following. He agreed in his first interview, which was on November 13th, 1980. He was officially arrested and booked on November 14th, 1986, which was my 6th birthday. But on November 14th, when he was initially interviewed, he said, I'll take a polygraph, I'll do whatever. So when they scheduled a polygraph, and then the day of the polygraph exam, they said, no, we're not, it's been canceled, right? And he didn't get it until Bill Proctor, who worked for WXYZ in Detroit, had his television station pay for it in 1996, I think it was, a decade later just about. He actually took a polygrapher into the prison and had him take it.
Wow.
And also, by the way, his main alibi witness, Michelle Woodworth, who was his pregnant girlfriend who had his child, who was with him in Rock at 9 o'clock in the morning when they woke up that morning, she also passed polygraphs saying that he was there with her. So there are a number of these things that when you start, you don't get a lot of this stuff from the sort of the baseline coverage of it. But like when you go into it, it's like there's so many different things that are just completely inconceivable.
Well, I'm so excited to have your voice and your storytelling lead this. And that, when you said that this is also going to be kind of about my journey jumping into this, I think that's going to make it really different than a lot of other wrongful conviction cases, not to mention just his and the coverage it's had. What other themes, as we wrap up here, do you think are going to be really important to explore in this podcast above and beyond the wrongful conviction piece? Because, Scott and I have gotten a little flavor of it in just the questions that, you're going to want us to answer. But some of those cultural, some of those societal, some of those bias things, what are some other things that you think are important?
Well, I'm super interested in this case in particular from a micro level. He changed his name, and I'm interested in the separation of identity. If a person can be a certain way and try to distance themselves from that, and if they do that through changing their name and changing their faith and things like that. I'm super interested in that sort of angle from just a faith and religious, I guess, sort of angle. I think that's really important, specifically in this case. From a broader sense, I think that I'm really interested in the interplay of the justice system, and particularly in the way that, because I've looked at a few cases now, and there are things that I see, and of course every prosecution is different, but I don't want to call them games, but I see gamesmanship in it in a lot of situations.
Reindeer games.
Yes, exactly. I see some of that that's very interesting to me, and then also the way that the jurors are handled and the way the government handles things after the fact. To me, it's very, very difficult to understand how. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that at the very least, he's won a couple of habeas petitions. One of them said his conviction should have been overturned and he should be granted a new trial. And I don't think that a trial today, I don't think there's a jury that would convict him.
Sure.
I'd be shocked if that was the case. So I'm interested in that. Here's the thing. I'll say it like this. Like, I find it very, very hard to believe that there is not a statute of limitations on murder, but there is a statute of limitations on justice. That infuriates me.
Whew, that's a kick.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, just really quickly to go back to Scott, because I really do try to make sure that things are about the victim as much as I can. In this case, it's really difficult because I have not a lot about him. I FOIA'd his school records, which got denied, and a lot of things I've tried to do to get to know him. You know, I believe that Temujin Kensu is innocent fully. Now, something may come up and I might change my mind. I don't know. I'm working on this in real time.
Sure.
But what I would say is this. If what I believe right now is true, which I strongly believe it is, that means that whoever shot Scott Macklem got away. And what I say in the podcast, and I will repeat it in every episode, is this is 2 life sentences and 1 search for the truth. And that means that you have 2 people who have been administered life sentences. One of them is in a cold cemetery in Croswell, Michigan. And I went there and I saw him and I sat with him. And that's why that's how it's real for me. And this is why it means a lot to me. It's real for me because, you know, I sat there and talked to him, to his spirit. And then I went to Macomb County Correctional and I sat and I talked with Temujin Kensu. And I asked him, and you'll have to wait for the podcast, but I asked him initially, the first question I asked him was, who is Fred Freeman? And the last question I asked him was, who is Temujin Kensu? And the responses I got specifically on who is Temujin Kensu were one of the most moving things I've ever heard in my life. And it's why I'm so passionate about this, because I do fully believe that the wrong person is in prison for this crime. And I do believe he has changed. I do believe he has a lot to give. And I say to people, you know, he's done a lot for prisoners in the MDOC. And so just imagine what he could do if he was not in a cage.
Right.
I do fully believe that. And I hope I do the story justice. And I hope that people will look into the case on their own account and learn about it. I don't want to like change anybody's minds. I want people to have the agency to educate themselves and look at the facts and do it on their own. And if there's anything I could say about any other podcasters who want to do this, first of all, don't. But seriously, you know, just be very vigilant about the way you approach things and don't allow your bias in, because initially I've written my opening episode like 20 times and the first 10 of them were so biased, right? And I had to check my own bias about it. And I had to like really come back and look at myself and say, like, I'm really like, if you can imagine that if a balloon is, you know, truth, like, or what's being told to me, I'm trying to pop that balloon. And if I can't pop the balloon, then that's the truth, right? So my hope is that everybody who has this, you know, righteous anger or righteous love, probably is a better term, righteous love about a case where they really believe it's true, to look into it until you're really, really sure, and then go after it. And then, you know, everybody's voice is very, very important. And it might save a life, or it might give a family some peace. And that's all I'm hoping to do.
Awesome. Yeah.
Thank
you so much, Jason. So we have some rapid fire questions for you. Just 4 of them.
Yes, very quick.
I didn't think we were going to do those things.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Okay.
You're not getting out of it.
No. We want to like snap you out of the inconceivable and into the conceivable. Although this one is a little bit compelling. If you had to choose a last meal, what would it be?
Last meal? Gosh, it would be, chicken wings, crispy fries, ranch dressing, ribeye steak, and mashed potatoes, probably.
Oh my God,
you're such a dude.
You are such a dude.
Okay.
Good answer, and it sounds tasty.
What is your favorite movie that takes place in Los Angeles?
Favorite movie that takes place in Los Angeles? So I would almost say LA Confidential, but I know Scott hates that movie.
No, I'm the one that hates
Shiloh
it.
hates it.
Oh no, sorry. Okay, my bad. Got it switched around.
That's okay.
I do like LA Confidential. Heat. Said?
Oh yeah.
I love Heat. Heat's probably
good.
the one.
What's your favorite thing to do with your kids?
Play. I mean,
Aww.
they're, I just love playing with my
I look up, folks, anybody that's listening to this from now or for in the future, I'm opening up a huge Pandora's box with this question because Jason is like the most awesome dad ever.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
absolutely adores his children and gives such wonderful parental quality time. So now he can't even answer it. Now he's going to get maudlin because he
I
loves his
know.
kids so much.
I'm
So
like getting sad right now.
I know. So Shiloh, you got
Okay,
to shake it up with the last question.
last question, and I've never said this before, but there is a right or wrong answer to this one, okay?
Oh,
But I have more faith. I wouldn't have had any more faith in anyone else, so no pressure. What's your favorite West Coast 90s hip hop song?
you know. You know.
You have to say it. You have to say it for everybody.
Regulate.
Regulate. Thank you. You pass.
Okay.
Love
So
you,
how
Jason.
can people?
I love you guys. Thank you
you.
so much for letting me do this. I appreciate you
Oh
both.
no,
I appreciate you
for
guys.
your time
Like,
Saturday.
yeah,
Um,
come and you're gonna come on the show and you're gonna give everybody that's listening now, like come on and listen because they're gonna give their awesome expertise on things that I can't talk about because I'm not smart enough.
Well, how can people find you on social media?
But yeah, Inconceivable, the Story of Temujin Kensu podcast group on Facebook is there.
Okay.
We have about almost 600 members now, and we'd love to have anybody else that is willing to join and talk about this case. And we really do just want to talk about that. And then I've got another case out of Michigan that's been pushed to me that I'm looking into that will be season 2 of the case, and it's another
Okay.
person that, so far as I can tell, I believe he is also an innocent person. So,
well, we will definitely be keeping our audience up to date and guiding them towards a Facebook group. If there ends up being another social media outlet for it, let us know. We will keep everybody up. And of course, we're going to tell everybody to go and push that subscribe button.
And I appreciate not just the both of you, but all your listeners, and also for all your listeners who have gotten to hear me edit the show the last several years. And I appreciate you both letting me be a part of the family. Like I have so much respect and love for you both. And you've been better than colleagues in your venture. You've been friends. And so I just appreciate you both. And I really appreciate you letting me come on and talk about this because it's something I'm very passionate about. And let's try to get a guy out of prison who doesn't deserve to be there. That's my position at this moment. So
okay. All right. We will stay tuned to see how it goes. So thank you, Jason. Thanks everyone for whoever was here tonight live and going to see this in the future. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time on LA
Not So
Confidential. Bye, everyone.
Bye, folks.
We sincerely thank you for spending some time with us today. LA Not So Confidential is part of the Crawl Space Media Network. Each episode is hosted, produced, and written by Dr. Scott and Dr. Shiloh. Our post-production editing and sweetening magic is handled by the multi-talented Jason Usry of Ear Cult Productions.
Our theme music, entitled Cool Vibes Film Noir, is composed and performed by the talented Kevin MacLeod. He graciously allows us to use his music via a Creative Commons Attribution license. Please check out all of Kevin's amazing work on YouTube.
All of the resources for each episode can be found on our website at la-not-so-confidential.com. You can find us on Instagram at LA Not So Podcast, on X at LA Not So Pod, and on Facebook at LA Not So Confidential. Media inquiries and bookings are scheduled at alienistentertainment@gmail.com.
Once a month, we go live on YouTube on Saturday afternoon. So pay attention to our social media announcements to join our interactive broadcast entitled Behind the Couch, where we interview guests on a number of psych, criminal justice, and true crime topics.
And lastly, we'd be honored if you joined our Patreon at patreon.com/LA Not So Podcast. With a subscription, you get an ad-free listening experience, additional content, host interaction, and you'll be the first to know about upcoming live events, social gatherings, and super cool swag.
Thanks for listening, and join us next time on LA
Not So
Confidential.